Birth E complete version. Hey, congrats on stumbling across another must-watch before bed heavy-hitting film. We Bury the Dead. During a top-secret US military operation, an experimental pulse weapon accidentally detonated. The nearby island instantly turned into a living hell. The residents of the island, of course, all died. Global public opinion immediately exploded. 2 days after the incident, the situation was finally brought under initial control. To speed up disaster relief and calm public outcry, the government offered big bucks to recruit civilian volunteers to help the soldiers handle things. Our lead, Ava, is one of them. But she's not here for the money. She's here to find her husband, who happened to be on the island for work when it happened. Even though the news says no one on the island survived, she's still clinging to a sliver of hope. Soon the plane lands safely. Ava shuffles along with the group toward the registration area, but before they get far, their phones are forcibly confiscated. Clearly, there's something on this island the outside world can't know about. After entering a makeshift tent, she finds that most of the volunteers are actually here looking for loved ones too. After all, with an accident this severe, no unrelated person would risk coming here, except for those who are desperately broke, of course. But what Ava didn't expect was that the hotel her husband had booked for his trip happened to be right in the blast epicenter. That area is still a sea of fire to this day. So, for safety's sake, the volunteer teams can only start working from the outer edges. Ava ends up assigned to the body recovery squad. However, before they set out, the team leader announces some strange news. It turns out that during the rescue, the military discovered that some of the victims were showing signs of coming back to life. Even though they no longer have a heartbeat, Bushwo says, the high-intensity electromagnetic signals, Bushwo says, actually reactivated the brain cells of the dead. Bushwo says, these living dead don't have any consciousness from when they were alive. Bushwo says, they move slowly and pose no threat at all. Bushwo says, if you spot any living dead during cleanup, there's absolutely no need to worry. Bushwo says, just light a signal flare, Bushwo says, and military personnel will show up immediately to handle it. Bushwo says, after everything was explained, Bushwo says, everyone boarded the bus and headed to the mission area. The volunteers were split into pairs to get to work. Ava's partner was a short-haired woman. Bushwo says, the two walked into a house, Bushwo says, and started their first cleanup. Bushwo says, the power here was already destroyed by the pulse, so they had to use flashlights to see. Seeing no bodies on the first floor, she says, Bushwo says, her partner headed straight upstairs to check. Bushwo says, while Ava went to the kitchen alone. Bushwo says, upon seeing the pastries on the dining table, she guessed the family was preparing afternoon tea at the time. Bushwo says, so she pulled back the curtain and looked into the yard, and sure enough, spotted a family of 3 lying on the ground. Bushwo says, their faces were covered in blue veins, a truly terrifying sight. She says, yet there were no signs of them trying to run or struggle, Bushwo says, as if they dropped dead before they could even react. Bushwo says, the two moved the bodies to the side of the road, waiting for the military's forklift to haul them away. She says, Bushwo says, watching the growing pile of bodies before them. Ava's partner fell silent for a long time. Bushwo says, finally her mental defenses completely crumbled. Bushwo says, she quit the volunteer mission on the spot. Bushwo says, but she had barely left. When a volunteer ran out of the house next door, Bushwo says, he crouched by the door vomiting non-stop. Meanwhile, his partner Clay seemed unusually calm. After a brief look between Clay and Ava, the two silently formed a new pair. Bushwo says, they walked into another house to look for bodies. Bushwo says, this new partner's like a cold-blooded corpse-hauling machine, Bu said. Without wearing a mask, he just takes in all the stinking bodies, Bu said. Ava was baffled by how hard he was working, Bu said. After all, everyone's only here looking for family, Bu said. But Clay said he hasn't had any family for a long time, Bu said. He became a volunteer just to make money, Bu said. The bodies all over the room were horrifying, Bu said. Some died right on the couch, Bu said. Some even dropped dead mid-poker game in the bathroom, Bu said. Just like that, gone in an instant. After clearing a few more bodies, Bu said, they ran into a pretty big problem, Bu said. A 300-pound gut, Bu said. The two of them couldn't lift it no matter what, Bu said. In the end, they called for backup and barely got it done. Lunchtime rolled around quickly, Bu said. Over the meal, everyone was buzzing about the island, Bu said. One woman said she'd overheard soldiers talking, Bu said. Seemed like they were discussing how to deal with the living dead, Bu said. But so far, Yua, no volunteer has actually seen what the living dead look like. Suddenly, an old woman nearby burst into tears. She kept begging them not to take her child, Bu said. She insisted her kid might still come back to life, even though everyone understood how she felt. A rotting, mindless body wouldn't mean anything even if it did come back. After a quick bite to eat, Ava and Clay got right back to work, Bu said. Just as they were carefully searching through the bodies, a scream suddenly came from next door, Bu said. Sounded like they'd found one of the army's living dead, Bu said. A few gunshots rang out, Bu said. Making Ava even more worried, Bu said. She thought, if her husband had turned into one of those things, Bu said, they'd probably just shoot him on the spot, Bu said. So she had to get to the core zone fast, Bu said, and find her husband before anyone else did, Bu said. Right after, the two started checking a garage, Bu said. Bu said. Ava flashed her flashlight and looked carefully. Suddenly, she spotted a trail of messy, bloody footprints on the ground. Bu said. Bu said, as the light shone deeper inside, Bu said, they indeed found a living dead behind the storage shelf. Bu said, but the thing just stood there in a daze, showing no reaction to anything happening outside. Seeing this, Clay immediately rushed outside and lit a signal flare. Watching another living dead being dealt with by the military, Bu said Ava knew she couldn't wait any longer. Bu said, over the next few days of work, Bu said she managed to get her hands on a map of the island. Bu said, Boo said, and drew a detailed route to the core area on it, planning to sneak away when the time was right. But no sooner had she stepped out than Boo said she got caught red-handed by the person in charge here. Boo said Ava played it cool and said she was just feeling cooped up and only wanted to get some fresh air outside. Boo said, but when she said that, she forgot she still had her backpack on. Boo said her full of holes lie was exposed on the spot. Seeing her plan fall apart, Ava had no choice but to head back to camp. Boo said she found Clay and tried to ask for his help. Boo said after hearing her out, he said, the situation on the outskirts was already this bad, Boo said, let alone the core area closer to the blast. Boo said there was no way Ava's husband survived. Boo said unless he came back from the dead and turned into a living dead. Boo said, and those words hit right home for Ava. Turns out, during this time, Boo said Ava had been observing the living dead. Boo said she noticed that in their eyes, a flicker of helplessness would occasionally show. Boo said this meant they might still have some human consciousness left. Boo said so she still couldn't give up on her husband. Boo said, hearing this, Clay felt Boo said the woman in front of him seemed a bit off her rocker. But whether out of sympathy, Boo said, or wanting something to happen with Ava, Boo said he actually agreed right away to go with her. Boo said Boo says they're still pretty far from the core zone. Boo says Boo says they need to find some transportation first before making any plans. At dawn, the two headed straight for a nearby repair shop. Boo says sure enough, they found a motorcycle that still ran. Boo says just as Clay was excitedly test riding it, Boo says Ava casually pulled aside a plastic tarp nearby. Boo says several contorted corpses suddenly appeared before them. Boo says these people seemed to have been having a party before they died. The sudden disaster, Boo says caught them off guard and they died on the spot. After figuring out the route, Boo says Clay went off to look for a helmet. Boo says Ava was drawn away by a strange noise. She followed the sound and sure enough found a living dead. Boo says, but unlike before, Boo says, this living dead actually reacted to the light, Boo says, and even looked at Ava with an aggressive stare, Boo says. Plus, it kept grinding its teeth nonstop. Boo says, what are you doing? Get away from her, Boo says. With Clay urging her on, the two made it out the back door to a side road. After making sure no one else was around, they cautiously started up the motorcycle. Clay floored it toward the quarantine zone. Boo says the whole way was dead silent, no sign of life. Boo says just a few cars wrecked by the disaster, Boo says, scattered haphazardly across the road. If Eva and the others had been in a car too, they'd probably have been stuck halfway there. Thanks to the motorcycle's agility, the trip seemed to be going smoothly, Boo says. But they hadn't been happy for long when a few military patrol cars came right at them. The two got scared and quickly ducked behind a car. Boo says, just as things were incredibly tense, a walking living dead appeared behind them. Boo says it looked exactly like a zombie. Just when they thought they were about to be spotted, the military convoy drove further away. The two finally let out a small sigh of relief. After confirming there was no danger, they got back on the motorcycle and kept going. As they got closer to the core zone, the smoke from the explosion got thicker. The stinging smell of burning and rotting corpses almost made them choke. Luckily, they passed an abandoned ambulance and managed to find gas masks inside. But at the same time, they noticed something strange. The zombies here seemed way more active, even crawling with just their upper bodies. And they were extremely aggressive. The two didn't dare stop for a second, just wanting to find Ava's husband quickly and get out of this mess. They rode on for who knows how long, until the motorcycle finally ran out of gas. They stopped at a gas station to rest for a bit. The long ride left Clay sore all over. To thank him for his help along the way, Ava kindly gave him a massage to relax. She wanted to make sure Clay could keep riding and help her find her husband. But just then, they heard uneven footsteps behind them. Where did this guy come from? Clay thought it wasn't dangerous, but the next second it suddenly went berserk and started moving fast toward them. It was their first time facing this, and they had no idea what to do. Luckily, a soldier showed up just in time to save them. The soldier then said, the longer time passes, the more violent these zombies get, and the only way to stop them is to kill them all over again. Turns out the soldier's name is Reese, and he's the captain in charge of this area. Seeing them barge into the core zone on their own, he seriously questioned their reason for being there. Ava figured he did save her life, so she cooperated and told the truth. She said she was originally a volunteer for body recovery. She only came in to look for her husband, whose fate was unknown. Hearing this, Reese seemed to be touched. His eyes noticeably softened, but no one knows if his reaction was real or fake. He first separated the two and held them in different cells. Then he said that until he got orders from his superiors, they would have to stay here for the time being. Alone, Eva couldn't help but think of her husband. But in her mind, besides those sweet memories, there was also the growing distance between them. Even at their last parting, they'd already talked about getting a divorce. Since it had already come to this, why did she still risk coming to find him? Actually, Eva had always known in her heart that she still loved him deeply. Thinking about that time they discussed divorce, it was very likely the last time they'd ever see each other. Eva felt an indescribable guilt. But just as she was feeling down, Reese suddenly pushed open the door. He said Kyle took the chance while he was distracted and rode off. He was worried Kyle might run into danger out there. Eva didn't understand why Kyle would run. But thinking she'd already caused him enough trouble, she could only pray he'd make it back to camp safely. Now only Reese and Eva were left in the room. Reese said he really sympathized with what Eva was going through, and was willing to escort her to the hotel where her husband was on business. But since the core zone was full of dangers, he had to go home first to resupply before setting out. Eva felt very relieved inside, feeling like she'd met a kind person. Without hesitation, she got in the car with him. When they arrived at Reese's place, it was already late at night. To better recover their strength, Reese suggested they grab a bite to eat here first. Boo said they'd set off right after a quick rest. While eating, Boo said Ava noticed the photos nearby. Boo said she realized the man in front of her was already married. Boo said, but his wife never showed up. Boo said turns out when the accident happened, Boo said Reese was on a mission out of town. Boo said his pregnant wife was home alone. Boo said by the time he saw the news and rushed back to the island, Boo said his wife and unborn baby were already dead. Boo said, Reese's voice choked up as he said this. Boo said he said it took him a long time, Boo said, to accept reality and bury his wife and child. Boo said the real reason he wanted to help Ava find her husband was to get away from here and stop being haunted by memories. Boo said the similar experience weighed heavy on Ava. Boo said, but more than that, she was worried about her husband's safety. When do we leave? Boo said. But before we go, Boo said, I need a small favor. Boo said. Then the camera cut. Boo said, the scene shifted to the bedroom upstairs. Boo said, turns out Reese's small favor was asking Ava to wear his wife's clothes and dance with him. Boo said, as a final tribute to his late wife. Boo said, even though the request was a bit twisted, Boo said, to get him to help find her husband. Boo said she had to reluctantly agree. Boo said. But while changing, Boo said she didn't put on his wife's ring. Boo said she kept her own wedding ring on instead. An elegant melody started and they began to dance. Boo said, at first Ava was stiff. Boo said, like every cell in her body was resisting. Until she recalled dancing with her husband. Boo said, she gradually let herself feel it. Boo said, the song ended and Ava figured it was time to go. Boo said, but just then Reese suddenly said, Boo said, I told you to put on everything, including the ring. Boo said, the song's over. Do you mind switching it up? Boo said. Boo said he promised just one dance and we're done. Now take me to find my husband. Boo said. Seeing Eva wouldn't listen to him, Boo said. Reese's attitude immediately changed. Boo said, he threatened her directly. Boo said, if you don't put the ring back on and dance again, Boo said, then he won't take her to find her husband. Boo said, Eva couldn't take it anymore and finally stopped compromising. Boo said. Before he could react, Boo said Eva ran into the next room. Boo said she locked the door and kept gasping for breath. Before she could figure out what to do next, Boo said she turned around and saw Reese's dead wife. Boo said Eva finally realized what was going on. Reese had never been able to accept his wife and child's death. Boo said he'd even developed mental issues. Boo said, do you know why only some people can come back? Boo said because they still have unfinished business. Just like Katie, the dead wife. Boo said, she's not ready to leave yet, it's not her time. Boo said, she'll be an amazing mom. Boo said Ava was stuck between a rock and a hard place. She was afraid Katie on the bed would attack her, Boo said, but also worried the unhinged Reese would break down the door. Boo said after hesitating, Eva decided to escape through the window. Boo said to stop him from dragging her back. Boo said she had to try to steal the car keys downstairs. But the moment she pushed the door open, Boo said Reese, coming down the stairs, spotted her. Boo said Eva ducked into the storage room in a panic, and Reese rushed in right after her. Boo said as the flashlight beam swept across. Boo said the room was packed with locked-up zombies. Boo said, and this made Eva realize Reese had probably gone AWOL from his unit long ago. Boo said. And the reason he understood how the mutation worked, Boo said, was exactly because he'd run tons of experiments on these zombies. Boo said right in front of her, facing such a crazy and twisted guy. Boo said, Ava's brain was racing. Boo said, she quietly took off her wedding ring. Boo said, then she stepped out and decided to take a gamble. Honey, my ring is missing. Have you seen it? Ava's obedience made Reese let his guard down, Boo said. After the two walked out of the warehouse, Boo said, she quickly spotted the car keys on him. Boo said, so she moved closer and hugged him. Boo said, while constantly comforting him. Boo said, saying she'd put on his late wife's ring and dance with him again. Boo said, it's too late, Ava. You shouldn't have ruined, Boo said. Turns out Ava was the real tough one, Boo said. She snatched the car keys, Boo said, then ran to the car to escape, Boo said. But the moment the headlights came on, Boo said, she saw Reese's wife standing right in front of her, Boo said, worried she'd come after her for revenge, Boo said. Ava floored it and sped away. She drove for who knows how long, Boo said. She finally couldn't fight the exhaustion, Boo said, and fell fast asleep in the car. But when she woke up, she found the road ahead blocked by a car accident. With no choice, she grabbed an axe for protection, then headed toward the core area on foot. Ava hadn't had a drop of water the whole way, Boo said. By the time the sun was almost setting, Boo said, she was already completely exhausted, Boo said, not noticing a much more violent zombie, Boo said, slowly creeping up behind her. Boo said. In a panic, Ava ducked into a bus. But the zombie didn't give up, Boo said. Luckily, at that critical moment, Ava found a fire extinguisher in the bus, Boo said. Boo said, looking at the bloody, mangled zombie. Ava's heart was pounding like crazy, Boo said. But before she could catch her breath, Boo, yeah. The zombie that wasn't completely dead launched another attack, Boo said. After confirming the zombie was completely done for, Boo said. She finally picked up her axe and kept moving. Soon, the sky gradually darkened. Ava found an abandoned RV, Boo said. She planned to rest here for the night, Boo said. When she took off her socks, she realized, Boo said, her feet were already covered in blisters, she said. Boo said, but this still didn't make her want to back down at all. According to the map's markings, Boo said, she was now only about 6 kilometers from her husband's hotel. Boo said, there was only about 6 kilometers left. Boo said, if nothing goes wrong, she'll get there tomorrow, Boo said. Boo said, but she had only just fallen asleep, Boo said, when a strange digging sound came from nearby. Since the RV's door lock was already broken, Boo said, so to be safe. Boo said she had to bite the bullet and get out to check. But what happened next completely stunned her, said. The one digging was actually a zombie, Boo said. After noticing Ava's presence, Boo said. He didn't react at all, he just turned back and kept doing his thing. Not until she saw the few corpses nearby did Ava finally understand, Boo said. The zombie was preparing a grave for his family, Boo said. After confirming the zombie wasn't hostile, Ava let her guard down and stepped forward to help. Boo said, just as she finished and was about to leave. She noticed the zombie looking at her expectantly. Boo said. Ava immediately understood what he meant. She grabbed the shovel and helped him reunite with his family. Boo said. This little incident left Ava unable to sleep. Yeah, Boo said. She headed to her husband's hotel through the night. She finally arrived as the sun rose. Boo said. She said. But when she walked into the building, she found Boo said. This wasn't the business hotel her husband had mentioned at all. It was a very luxurious resort. Boo said. A large number of female corpses were lying on the ground. Sayed they were probably doing yoga when they were alive. Suddenly, a roar echoed through the air, Boo said. It was a severely mutated female zombie, Boo said. Except she wasn't as friendly as the last one, he said. She wanted to eat Ava even through the glass, Boo said. With a heavy heart, Boo said. She began carefully searching every room, Boo said. But most of them were completely empty, Boo said. Probably turned into zombies and went out to scavenge, Boo said. Then Ava noticed, Boo said, a sign hanging on the door handle. Boo said she knew this trick all too well. Because her husband had the same habit, Boo said. She hurried inside and sure enough found him, Boo said. Unfortunately, his body was already covered in death spots, Dow said, and there were no signs of him turning into the undead. Ava finally let go of her obsession, Boo said. Boo said she was looking for a proper place to bury her husband. But just as she looked up, Boo said, she happened to spot 2 wine glasses, Boo said. One of them still had a lipstick mark on it, Boo said. She finally realized what was going on, so she started rummaging through the room. She quickly found a woman's ID, she said. And the wedding ring her husband had casually tossed aside, Boo said. Turns out he didn't come here on a business trip at all. He had secretly come here to meet his lover, Boo said. No wonder the husband who once loved her deeply, Boo said, had been picking fights over nothing lately, Boo said. Boo said, thinking back on all the hardships along the way. Boo said Ava felt like a total clown. She collapsed by the body and couldn't stop crying, Boo said. Unexpectedly, the one calling her name was Clay, Boo said. Turns out after he escaped a couple days ago, Boo said. He couldn't stop worrying about Ava, Boo said. So he tracked down the address from memory and found her here, Boo said. Seeing this, Ava finally opened her heart, Boo said. She said she had actually sensed her husband's affair, Boo said. She had already seen it coming in her heart, Boo said. But she had no right to blame him, Boo said. After all, she was the one who cheated first, Boo said. She even went so crazy that it left her body unable to bear children forever. It caused her to be infertile for life. Ava felt incredibly guilty afterward. That's why she's so obsessed with finding her husband. Even if it's just giving him a proper burial, it would be a way to make it up to him. Since all that info was a lot to take in, it completely crashed Clay's brain. But hey, it wasn't his problem. Still, Clay helped Ava give her husband a sea burial. Ava took off her wedding ring, deciding to completely cut ties with the past. After everything was taken care of, they found a car to head back the way they came. But unexpectedly, a zombie blocked their path halfway. Looking closer, it turned out to be Reese's wife. Her clothes were covered in blood, and her belly was noticeably smaller. Seems like she just finished giving birth. Then a baby's cry came from nearby. Ava instantly figured it out. She ran toward the baby's direction. Sure enough, in an abandoned house, she found a newborn baby. It didn't inherit any of its mother's mutations, looked just like a healthy, normal baby. That's where the film ends. It didn't follow the typical zombie movie formula. Instead, it turned those flesh-eating scary zombies into the dead who need to be buried. From what Reese said earlier, only people with unresolved obsessions in life would turn from a corpse into the living dead. But her husband's body didn't turn, which means he'd already let go of his feelings for Ava. That's why Ava cried so hard. She thought if she turned over a new leaf, she could make things right with her husband through IVF. But reality was just like what Reese told her. It's too late, Ava. Boo says you ruined that dance. Eva could have chosen to run away like most people, but instead she volunteered for the most dangerous corpse transport work, she says. Boo says, just to find her husband as soon as possible. She's actually not as pathetic as she seems, Boo says. Instead, she's facing her mistakes head-on and seriously making up for them, Boo says. The appearance of the newborn at the end, Boo says, is more like some kind of reward for all her hardship. Ava taking off her ring and then holding the baby, Boo says. represents her shift from living in the past to living in the present, Boo says.